Hello everyone, this is the second part of Lecture 10, which concludes our study of Stoicism. We begin this video by recalling the ideal of the Stoic sage, who lives in a cognitive state that's in full agreement with nature. This figure of the sage represents an aspirational ideal in Stoicism, embodying perfect wisdom and virtue. But Stoicism is not just a philosophy of ideals. It's a practical guide for living. And so we'll also compare the sage in this video with the figure of the Progressor, a realistic embodiment of Stoic practice that emphasizes the importance of continued development and growth. Unlike the sage, we'll see how examples of Stoic progressors appear quite often even in our contemporary world today. After considering this difference between the sage and the progressor, we'll move on to explore some problems for Stoicism before ending by considering the influence of Stoic philosophy in the modern day. Let's briefly recap the main traits of the Stoic sage that we discussed in the first part of this lecture. The sage embodies the pinnacle of Stoic virtue, marked by a form of wisdom that enables them to respond well to external events and the impressions that bombard us in everyday life. A Stoic sage is politically engaged, demonstrating a global concern for all humankind, a true cosmopolitan. They wish with reservation, focusing on efforts rather than being fixated on outcomes. This reflects the Stoic principle of concerning oneself with actions within one's power, while accepting and adapting to whatever the future brings. Adversity does not deter the sage. They handle it with composure, always maintaining a sense of equanimity. Further, the sage is the epitome of emotional health, according to the Stoics, experiencing feelings that are in harmony with what's truly good and bad, rather than being swayed by external conditions. In essence, as we noted, the Stoic sage is unflappable. Their state of mind is undisturbed, regardless of whatever fortune or misfortune they experience, embodying the Stoic mantra to live in agreement with nature. Now here's some bad news. The bad news is that only the sage, according to the Stoics, is virtuous. And the news gets worse. The rest of us are all equally vicious. This sounds a bit harsh, but remember that virtue for the Stoics is wisdom, so vice must be understood as a kind of ignorance. We're all vicious for the Stoics in the sense that all of us are cognitively weak or prone to make bad judgments. Again, the point here is that knowledge or wisdom, responding well consistently to impressions and always making good judgments, that's really hard. The situations we find ourselves in are often complex, with temptations and distractions that can distort our perceptions in subtle ways. The things that people say to us can be ambiguous or misinterpreted, leading us to form impressions that can skew our judgment. Consider here how easy it is to believe that a person's insulted us when they really haven't. And suppose you really have been insulted by someone. Consider how hard it is to follow the Stoics' advice that this doesn't represent a genuine harm to you because it's something that's outside of your control. The Stoics claim that what other people think of us is not, at the end of the day, up to us. This may be true, but how many of us are not affected in any way by other people's opinions? The good news about not being a sage, though, is that it encourages a more forgiving outlook, both with respect to ourselves when we make bad judgments and with respect to others. All of us, on this view, are in a default state of being prone to make mistakes. However, the Stoics point out that we can still all be progressors. We can still all strive to be sages, and in going about our daily lives, we can all try to approximate as best we can the attitude of the sage. This figure of the progressor becomes a guiding light in Stoic thought, a figure who, though not a sage, is on the road to wisdom. Epictetus explains the stages of this journey to wisdom as a process of education. In his Enchiridion, he acknowledges our fallibility, our tendency to make mistakes, and instead of casting blame, he suggests a pathway to virtue through learning. Uneducated people blame others when they're doing badly, he says. Those whose education is underway blame themselves. But a fully educated person blames no one, neither himself nor anyone else. This shift from blame to self-improvement is central to the figure of the Stoic progressor. Epictetus' reference here to uneducated people does not reflect an intellectually elitist attitude. Remember, Epictetus himself was born a slave, and came from an underprivileged background. The education he's promoting is a matter of educating our psyches and how we respond to the world by understanding what's within our control and what isn't. When he refers to those whose education is underway, he's speaking of progressors, individuals who recognize the power of perception and the importance of judgment. These are people in the midst of learning how to respond well to external events and how not to be swayed by false impressions. They're on the path to Stoic virtue, making progress toward the ideal of wisdom by continually refining their ability to live in agreement with nature. The fully educated person, then, is the person who's formed the outlook of the Stoic sage. This person does not cast blame at all, not on others nor on themselves, because they've achieved a state of mental strength where their responses are in alignment with nature. When mistakes are made or events turn out in a way we don't wish them to, a fully educated person responds by saying, "This has happened." They don't take out their frustrations on others or get angry at themselves, but instead determine the best path forward in seeing how to carry on. This is an outlook where external events are met with sound judgment, where challenges are met with virtue. It's compatible with this outlook that we can still hold others and ourselves accountable for missteps. But for the sage, there's no room for blame because their minds are in complete harmony with Stoic principles. So the education that Epictetus is emphasizing here is a journey from a state of being uneducated and ignorant in the Stoic sense, prone to casting blame and overvaluing external events, to being a progressor, someone who's growing in wisdom in the direction of sagehood. This is also the sense in which education is a liberating experience for Epictetus. In the second quote here from the Discourses, he argues against the common notion that education is only for the privileged, asserting instead that true freedom comes from education. Only the educated are free, in the sense that only those who have undergone the Stoic training of discerning what is and isn't under our control can truly be said to be free. This Stoic education frees us from the tyranny of external events and from the emotional turmoil we experience when we mistakenly believe we can control what is, by nature, uncontrollable. Epictetus is therefore challenging the idea that freedom is a matter of social or political status. Instead, he presents a radical redefinition. Real freedom lies in the domain of our inner lives, in our ability to maintain control over our judgments and our responses. Freedom, on this view, is not about changing the external world to fit our desires. It's about aligning our desires with the rational order of the universe. In this way, those whose education is underway are becoming free in the most profound sense of the word for Epictetus. Free from delusions about what's good and what's bad. Free from misplaced blame, and free to pursue a life of virtue and wisdom. And so now we have a blueprint for how to be a Stoic progressor. First of all, we should focus insofar as we can on efforts rather than outcomes, on how we judge and respond to events rather than the events themselves. The Stoics say a lot in this vein about the inner self, or our will, which is our capacity for rational choice and something that every human being possesses. This is what's under our control. Conventional external goods, on the other hand, like money, your job, fame, victory, and so on, these things may be pursued with reservation, but they all lie outside our ultimate control, and so we should not train our sights on them, but cultivate instead an attitude of indifference toward them. For the Stoics, this does not mean we should refrain from seeking conventional goods altogether. They have a sophisticated way here of classifying things under the category of indifference. While they held that virtue, the excellence of the soul that lies in responding well to impressions, is the only true good, they also recognize that certain things in life are naturally preferred or dispreferred. Preferred indifference include things like health, wealth, and social status. They are under the category of indifference rather than genuine goods because they don't contribute to the internal good of our soul and thus are not good in the strictest sense. However, these external goods are preferred because they can be used virtuously and contribute to a smoothly flowing life. On the flip side, we have dispreferred indifference, such as poverty, social isolation, and illness. These are naturally dispreferred because they pose challenges to living in accordance with nature. However, they're still indifferent to our virtue and thus our happiness, according to the Stoics. The Stoic Progressor, consequently, learns to approach all indifference with a rational and measured attitude. While it's natural to prefer health over sickness and wealth over poverty, the Progressor understands that these conditions do not define one's state of mind. The best fortune and the worst misfortune we experience both present opportunities for exercising virtue. Qualities like patience in illness, generosity in wealth, humility in fame, and resilience in poverty. Finally, the Stoics also believe that all of us, given the social roles we naturally take on in life, end up having certain duties, and they encourage us to perform these duties. If you're a doctor, you should promote the health of your patients, even though the Stoics thought that health itself is an indifferent. If you have the responsibilities of the Roman emperor, like Marcus Aurelius, you should protect your country from invading armies, even though territory and political power are indifferents. So we should do what we can to live up to our duties and aim to succeed in any roles we have. But if it turns out we lose all of these things, whether it's our career or our health or money or other people, we should still be able to carry on. Marcus Aurelius puts the point in just a few words. Accept humbly, let go easily. We find a complementary idea in Seneca's writings on how to approach the ups and downs of life with grace. Let every day pass as I would wish it to, he says. Let new congratulations join the old. I will not on this account give way to self-love. Seneca here recognizes the natural human inclination toward preferred indifference, but he warns against becoming complacent or overly attached to these things. Whatever fortunate state he's in, he advises against falling into self-love and thinking himself truly happy. Next, he considers dispreferred indifference. Alter this generosity of time to the opposite, he says. Let my soul be buffeted from this quarter and that by loss, by grief, by various misfortunes. Let no hour lack some ground for complaint. I will not on this account call myself the most miserable of the miserable. I shall not on this account curse any one day. For I have seen to it that no one day shall be a black one for me. Here Seneca notes that even in the face of suffering severe misfortune, grief, and loss, he won't fall into self-pity and regard himself as truly unhappy. Nevertheless, he concludes, I would rather moderate my joys than suppress my sorrows. What's Seneca saying here? He's making the Stoic point that while no external conditions affect his ability to live well, still, if given the choice, he naturally prefers a life of good fortune, moderating his joys instead of suppressing his sorrows. Seneca's approach is to accept both the wins and the losses in his life with equanimity, ensuring that neither success nor failure distracts him from his philosophical commitment to living in agreement with nature. In confronting the changing whims of fortune, what Seneca desires above all is a stable sense of self, demonstrating that for the Stoic Progressor, inner virtue is the source of genuine happiness, not the presence of preferred indifference or the absence of dispreferred indifference. Once we see these features of the Stoic approach to the good life, we can see how the ideal of the Stoic sage also permeates our culture in the figures of characters representing virtues of calm rationality and moral integrity. On the left here you see Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series, claiming it's our choices that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. This resonates with the Stoic belief that virtue, manifested through our choices and judgments, is the true measure of a person's character. And on the right you'll see Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings, expressing a similar idea. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that's given us. Again, we find the same Stoic emphasis on focusing on what's under our control, our decisions and actions, rather than on external events and outcomes. These characters, while fictional, serve as modern-day representations of Stoic wisdom, resonating with audiences, it seems, because they reflect the human quest for meaning through virtuous action. Now, someone might ask here whether every representation of a sage-like hero needs to look like an old white dude with a long, flowing beard. But in fact, this Stoic ideal can also be seen elsewhere, transcending age, ethnicity, and even the planet Earth by appearing in various narratives from popular culture that inspire us. From the patient guidance of Morpheus in The Matrix, who emphasizes the power of mental strength, to the wisdom of Yoda in Star Wars, or the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, who challenge our perceptions, to Ahsoka Tano's compassion and courage, and to the qualities of T'Challa, the Black Panther, who balances the wisdom of a king with the justice of a superhero. These characters from a range of narratives all share a common thread. They exhibit the qualities of the Stoic sage, revealing through their stories the virtues of a resilient mind, grace under pressure, and determination in the face of challenges. So at this point, you may be thinking this is all well and good, but these characters are all idealized figures who exist only in the world of fiction, whereas we never come across representatives of Stoic virtue in the world around us. But if you really think about it, history and the contemporary world often do present us with individuals who embody Stoic principles in profound ways. All of the figures before you, each in their own context, exhibit various characteristics of the Stoic sage. All of them have handled challenges in life with equanimity, not in a passive way, but with determination and a sense of justice. Consider Nelson Mandela's resilience and forgiveness after almost 30 years in prison during apartheid in South Africa, demonstrating a Stoic commitment to inner freedom and virtue over external conditions of injustice. His story is evidence of the power of human dignity and the ability to choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances. Or consider Malala Yousafzai's courageous advocacy for women's education, even in the face of violent opposition. Or the Dalai Lama's teachings on compassion, despite the adversity of exile, reflecting the Stoic practice of maintaining a sense of calmness by focusing on what we can control. Or Greta Thunberg's activism for the climate crisis, undeterred by criticism, standing up in the service of humanity for future generations and for the planet. Gandhi's peaceful resistance in the pursuit of Indian independence and emphasis on self-discipline mirror the Stoic philosophy of transforming society through practicing virtue. Jim Stockdale, held in captivity and tortured as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, explicitly found comfort in applying Stoic philosophy, especially the works of Epictetus, which he credited with helping him endure the psychological and physical trauma of captivity. And Rosa Parks' quiet strength and determination in the face of systemic injustice show the Stoic resolve to act according to one's principles, regardless of social pressures and consequences. Not all of these individuals were influenced directly by Stoic philosophy, nor are they without human flaws. However, their actions and attitudes seem to reflect a Stoic outlook in key ways as real-life Stoic progressors. All of them remind us that Stoicism is not merely an academic exercise, but a philosophy that can guide us in the pursuit of a meaningful and principled life. As we reach the end of our examination of Stoicism, let's consider some potential problems for its approach to the good life. Like all philosophical theories, Stoicism faces critical questions and issues that might challenge its central tenets and their application. And again, as budding philosophers, I encourage you to engage in this activity of independent thinking to determine for yourselves the strengths and weaknesses of the theory. The first problem concerns the Stoic system itself and the reliance of Stoic ethics on Stoic physics. Remember that although they were materialists, the Greek and Roman Stoics believed in an ordered cosmos imbued with reason, a teleologically governed universe where everything unfolds according to a providential plan. This view of nature as a rational and interconnected whole was the bedrock of their ethical framework, because virtue, according to the Stoics, requires living in harmony with this rational order, following nature in both thought and deed. However, our contemporary understanding of the universe, informed by modern science, does not support this teleological view. For scientists today, the cosmos operates according to natural laws without inherent purpose or moral direction. such a shift in perspective raises a question. Can Stoic ethics, with its emphasis on living in agreement with nature, maintain its coherence and relevance in the absence of Stoic physics? The contemporary philosopher Lawrence Becker, in a book titled A New Stoicism, addresses this problem directly. He suggests a reconceptualization of following nature. Instead of tying ethics to an ancient cosmology, Becker proposes that we ground our actions in an empirical understanding of the world. Following nature on this view becomes following the facts. It means facing those facts, accepting the physical and social realities of our world as they are before we deliberate about ethical matters and how to live. So perhaps ancient Stoicism just needs to be updated here. With this approach, Becker revises Stoic theory for the modern era, suggesting that its ethical insights don't require a cosmological scaffold to be compelling or applicable. But let's now consider a further problem. This problem concerns the value of external goods for the Stoics, or what they call preferred indifference, and the place of these goods in a well-lived life. The Stoics recognize these indifferents, like health, wealth, and status, as naturally preferred aspects of life, but they insist that they're not truly good for us, and so if severe misfortune strikes us, we can still live well without them. The thought here is that anyone can live well so long as they possess the right frame of mind. Compare this position to Aristotle's view, which we studied in Unit 2 of this course. Aristotle's view of the good life represents a contrast to the ideal of the Stoic sage. For Aristotle, external goods like wealth and health are not merely preferred, they are key elements of eudaimonia, or flourishing. He argues that a lack of certain external goods can significantly hamper our ability to live a virtuous life. So virtue, while essential, is not really sufficient for happiness, according to Aristotle. We also need a measure of fortune's favor. The Stoics deny this. They argue that a good life is accessible to anyone regardless of their external circumstances. This position holds a certain attraction in its egalitarian promise. The idea that anyone can live well, in spite of poverty and illness, can sound inspiring. Still, does Stoic egalitarianism come at the cost of realism? Can we really hold that external conditions are irrelevant to our ability to achieve eudaimonia? When pressed, the Stoic outlook may seem to demand an almost superhuman detachment from tragedy and misfortune. Is it realistic or even desirable to remain unaffected by severe poverty, grave illness, or profound grief? These questions should lead us to evaluate Stoic theory more closely, not to dismiss it, but to consider where it might have limits, and whether and how it has potential for contemporary adaptation. A final problem to discuss for the Stoic outlook concerns the value of friends and the possibility of love. We've seen in this unit how Stoicism champions the virtues of self-sufficiency and inner resilience while also acknowledging the importance of interpersonal relationships. However, the value of other people in Stoic thought raises complex questions about the depth and authenticity of such relationships. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent spokesmen, provides us with an interesting perspective on friendship by comparing a Stoic friend with an Epicurean friend. The wise man, Seneca says, self-sufficient as he is, still desires to have a friend if only for the purpose of practicing friendship and ensuring that those talents are not idle. The wise man does not desire a friend, as Epicurus puts it, for the purpose of having someone to come and sit beside his bed when he's ill, or come to his rescue when he's hard up, or thrown into chains. Instead, the wise man desires a friend so that, on the contrary, he may have someone by whose sickbed he himself may sit, or whom he may himself release when that person is held prisoner by hostile hands. Anyone thinking of his own interests and seeking out friendship with this in view is making a great mistake. Now, on the face of it, Seneca's words here sound appealing. He's clearly raising an objection to the Epicurean's approach to friendship, which he seems to regard as a self-centered theory, a problem we also raised for Epicureanism in our last unit. Seneca in this passage argues against the Epicurean view of friends as a source of pain relief. But is the Stoic approach to friendship any better, if friends are just virtue enablers? You might recall here from Unit 2 a striking contrast to the Stoic view in Aristotelian ethics, which elevates friendship as a mutual appreciation of the intrinsic worth of another person, a relationship where the good of the friend is desired purely for the friend's sake. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle identifies true friendship as a meeting of souls who recognize and love the goodness of each other as individuals. The Stoics, however, with their emphasis on the development of personal virtue and an invulnerable mental state, seem to fall short of Aristotle's ideal. This presents a hard challenge for Stoicism. How does it account for the human impulse to form bonds that are valued not only for their role in our personal growth, but also for the irreplaceable individuality of another person, where we seek to promote the well-being of our friends by loving them for their own sake? Is there space within Stoic thought for a love that sees other people not just as companions on the path to one's personal virtue, but as valuable in themselves? Having grappled with some of the challenges faced by Stoicism, let's now turn to the enduring influence of the philosophy and how it's been adopted in modern contexts. Stoicism's core principles have really transcended time, influencing various aspects of contemporary life and thought. Take, for instance, Reinhold Niebuhr's Serenity Prayer, widely used today in 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous. We were introduced to the first line of this prayer at the start of this unit, and now we can appreciate the whole thing. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This succinct prayer encapsulates the Stoic distinction between what's within our control and what isn't, urging us toward finding a balance between acceptance and action. Next, consider the influence of Stoicism on cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, an approach in psychotherapy that helps individuals understand the thoughts and feelings that influence their behavior. As the developers of CBT themselves have noted, this approach is rooted in the Stoics' view that how we perceive, think about, and respond to external events is more important than the events themselves. It's evidence of how Stoic ideas have found their way into psychological best practices, helping countless people navigate the challenges of mental health. Even more recently, Stoic philosophy has undergone a resurgence in the last 20 years, as contemporary theorists and practitioners have looked to adapt its principles for the present day. The modern Stoicism movement looks to update ancient Stoicism to fit our contemporary understanding of the world. This involves revising the Stoic view of nature so it's less teleologically oriented, recognizing degrees of virtue and control, and promoting the practical application of Stoic principles in daily life. The success of annual events like Stoicon and International Stoic Week, where participants have reported significant improvements in their emotional states and life satisfaction, underscores the enduring relevance of Stoic thought and how these principles still resonate today. And that concludes our study of Stoicism. In this video, we've distinguished the ideal Stoic sage from the progressor, observing that while perfection may elude us, continuous progress and improvement is within our grasp according to the Stoics. We've also examined the Stoic practice of cultivating indifference, which requires recognizing that the only source of true goodness in our lives consists in our rational choices and internal judgments, rather than in external possessions and other conditions over which we lack complete control. This led to a reconsideration of the Stoic sage, where we noted how this ideal of the virtuous person can be seen not only in the stories that surround us in popular culture, but also in the lives of contemporary figures who have faced adversity with a Stoic resolve. We discussed potential problems for ancient Stoicism, such as its reliance on a teleological view of nature, challenges to its egalitarian ideals when confronted with the harsh realities of life, and its stance on personal love and relationships. We then observed Stoicism's influence beyond the world of the classroom, in the practical frameworks of 12-step programs and cognitive behavioral therapy, and in the revival of Stoic thought in the modern Stoicism movement, which seeks to update and apply ancient Stoicism to address the complexities of present-day living. As we end this unit, you will have the opportunity to put Stoic principles into practice for yourself through a set of daily activities. Like the philosophical exercises in our last units, this hands-on experience will allow you to test Stoic theory by exploring whether its ideals are ones that you can live by. Perhaps you won't be in the position of a Stoic sage, because of course none of us are Stoic sages. But I hope you'll at least be able to try on the perspective of a Stoic progressor through these exercises. I'm looking forward to hearing about your experiences. Good luck and enjoy.